The next major step in the DEA rescheduling of medical marijuana under the Controlled Substance Act has happened now that the Attorney General has made a formal proposal to do so. This would move it to a Class 3 scheduled drug. Now, while I think that this is a good move overall, there's still lots of confusion as to what this will and will not do for people in America. So let's talk about it. Hey everybody, it's Dr. David, a board-certified pediatrician in Tampa, Florida, also a cannabis certifying doctor within the state. I have been told that I've certified more children than anybody else for medical cannabis, and I've been doing this since 2016. I really focus on education of for my patients, for them to know not just what to take, but how to use the products at different routes of administration. I lecture across the country on this topic, so something I know quite a bit about. Now, medical and recreational marijuana also do have very strong public support, and which is why I think a lot of these moves are taking place. Okay, so today we're going to talk about what the latest step that was taken by the federal government, what this will accomplish and what it won't accomplish, and also the confusion that this is going to still present and is right now. Okay, so what happened? Okay, so first of all, going back several months, the Department of Health and Human Services offered an opinion to reschedule from a 1 to a 3. And to refresh your memory, or if you don't know, Schedule 1 is a drug that has no current medical use with a high potential for abuse and or addiction. And the move to a Schedule 3 means moderate to low potential for physical and psychological dependence, but of course, still a drug. Now the Drug Enforcement Agency has now approved the Department of Health and Human Services opinion, and now the most recent thing is that the United States Department of Justice, and in particular Attorney General Merrick Garland, has now made this formal proposal moving forward on to the Schedule 3. So what happens next? There's still more. So there then needs to be a 60-day public comment period where people can submit comments to the FDA or to the DOJ, explaining their pros or cons to this change. Then the Department of Justice will analyze those public statements before they issue a final rule. And then the Department of Justice can change around and revise the rule depending on the feedback that they get. But then a final ruling is expected in September or October of this year. Don't you just love bureaucracy? Now, assuming that it does pass, what will be different? First and foremost, it will recognize that on the federal government level, medical cannabis, that it can be used, that it is illegal at the federal level, but it's also acknowledging that they feel that it's an okay thing for people to take. It acknowledges that it has less risk or for misuse and less problems than other medications like heroin and some of those really potent, completely illegal street drugs. And so, of course, that's really good because when if patients considering medical marijuana as a therapeutic, they may feel more comfortable knowing that this is now no longer deemed a Schedule 1 drug by the DEA, and they see that the potential for abuse and use of this and damage is really quite small. Okay. In addition to that, it will allow a lot of research to be done on cannabis and the different cannabinoids. So I know we've talked about THC and CBD, but there's lots of different THCs. You may have heard Delta 8, Delta 10, lots of other hemp-derived cannabinoids, CBG, CBGA, THCV. There are so many of these, and very few have been able to be studied for what their true potential is. And of course, the combination of them all, or the way it occurs in the plant, probably does so for a reason. So, yes, we may find that isolating these individual substances can bring separate benefits to them, but also acknowledging this. Nature gave it to this in this way for a reason with all of these put together. Now, in addition, it will remove the IRS's prohibition on cannabis dispensaries and will allow them to have, as just like all other businesses, to claim IRS tax write-off status. So that obviously would be helpful for the companies, which could very well help bring costs down. In addition, it will allow banks who have been previously hesitant to doing any business whatsoever with any of the cannabis dispensaries or other companies because of the federal limitations. This may allow and a lot of banks to now open up and do banking as usual, as they would for anybody else. Now, what will this not change? Okay, now, President Biden, in taking this project on in the first place, his stated goal was that no one should be jailed for using or possessing marijuana. Now that's great, and I fully agree with that. But these particular rules don't do anything about that. Okay, realistically, unless it's legalized or decriminalized on the federal level, those who have federal charges, they still wouldn't have any relief from that. Okay. Now another thing, as a Schedule 3 drug, it's still a drug. It's still a medical treatment, and that's something that needs to be obtained through a prescription. Something that a person would get through a pharmacy from a doctor's office. But at the same time, this wouldn't be. And we'll go back to that in a little bit, but this wouldn't change anything on the non-medical possession, because again, this would be just talking about possession legality, because obviously one cannot possess a Schedule 1 drug since you can't get that ordered through a doctor, right? So it's going to be illegal in all circumstances. But with the doctor's order, then it would be legal on the federal level from a with the Schedule 3. Now, also, reclassification of this would not free anybody who's currently incarcerated or who has charges against them. It won't expunge any criminal records. So that's not really going to happen. But hopefully this is the first step in that they're going to continue to move forward towards that stated goal. So now, what's confusing about all this? If I haven't confused you already. So a couple of things. So both marijuana and hemp are both cannabis sativa, and the laws are written as marijuana or as cannabis. That can confuse a lot of people, because if they just look at the package of any CBD product, they'll see cannabis sativa on it, and that can make a little uncertainty there. However, there has, based upon the Farm Bill, been a definition that based upon the amount of the THC is what defines which category that falls under. Now, in the United States, all controlled substances, as I said before, need to be prescribed by a physician who has a DEA number, and the patient has to get it from the pharmacy. Now, obviously, dispensaries don't have pharmacies, although in the state of Florida, at least, or any medical program, there, of course, does need to be a doctor's authorization. In that case, what happens to the legal dispensaries? Do they need to go create a pharmacy within theirs? Are they not going to be allowed to sell it in the first place? That's a fair question. Also, one of the things that I think a lot of us have concerns about is that this will allow big pharma to get involved in the industry. And what will that do to some of these smaller companies, that just has maybe a few dispensaries and just growing some of their own? But also, do we really want big pharma involved? So often big pharma gets involved with big money. And, it's starting to seem that the state programs and the dispensaries, and even in places where recreational is legal, there really doesn't need to be this big pharma involvement, because they're doing just fine on their own. And that concerns me when big pharma gets over, and then they can start doing pricing and really create some more of a monopoly that makes it less available in terms of the different types of products for the consumer, for the patient. Now, another thing, hemp has been defined as less than 0.3% THC by weight, okay? However, you can make a very big gummy that has 5 to 10 milligrams of THC, a dose that would get many people high. That would be something that, and that's happening now. I see that in dispensaries now. I checked last night, and you could go online and you can purchase a gummy online that says 10 milligrams, as long as it's not more than 0.3% as total THC, which is not a lot. And now I'm not advocating for people to do this. I think that's a bad idea. I really recommend people only getting products from medical dispensaries where they've been doing certificates of evaluation. We know their growing procedures, their packaging procedures, etc. But I brought this in just to show it's out there, though. People can get access to it right now. Now, also, if this were to happen, it would require a significant amount of federal government oversight. The DEA, the FDA, both who have had their funding cut over the past decade. How are they going to do that in the first place? But also, more importantly, do we really want the federal government involved in this growing and use of a plant overall? Okay, and again, I don't know that we need to get big government more involved in this, just like we don't need to get big pharma involved. Now, another thing is that what happens with controlled substances is that the FDA, there is formal tracking within the government of the patients, of what they're using and everything like that. So I know a lot of people aren't going to be so happy to know if the federal government wants all of their sales to be reported to them. So again, I'm not saying that this is going to happen. This needs to be figured out, but there's still confusion around it. Now, another thing is, if the DEA is involved, they can set quotas. They're allowed to do that with when it comes to controlled substances. And of course, will the federal government still defer to the states as they are right now? States that have legal systems, are they going to still defer to them, or are they going to again get more involved? And we just don't know. Okay, so what is my take overall? First of all, I do think that overall this is a move in the right direction. It by no way can this be the final answer. Okay, there's too much on the criminalization side of things, that needs to be figured out for so many people, especially those in underserved communities, which get hurt more by these laws because they're more enforced in those areas. But overall, I do believe, except for use in children, I think it may be best for cannabis to be descheduled altogether. Another thing we don't necessarily need to have the government involved in, especially if alcohol and tobacco are legal and not controlled substances, as they're infinitely more dangerous than the use of marijuana. Have a good day.